They thought he was just another old man, a slow, forgotten shadow in a quiet town. When the cashier pointed her finger and the officers slapped cold steel around his wrists, no one questioned it, no one asked, no one looked closer. Until 30 minutes later, when four black SUVs roared into the station, when agents in black suits saluted the man they had thrown into a cell, and when the officers finally realized they hadn't just arrested a harmless old man, they had handcuffed a silent legend and shattered a lifetime of unseen sacrifice. This is not just a story about a mistake. It's about what we lose when we forget to listen and what we find when we finally open our eyes. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The afternoon sun settled gently over Millstone, Virginia, bathing the small town in a soft, sleepy glow. It was the kind of town where everybody knew everybody, where the biggest scandal of the year might be Mrs. Callahan's cat going missing for a day. Nothing ever happened here. Nothing was supposed to happen here. Officer Kyle Morgan sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped thermos as he sat in his cruiser parked along Main Street. It was his third month on the job, and he still felt like he was wearing someone else's shoes. His training officer, Sergeant Tom Reeves, sat beside him, sunglasses perched on his nose, quietly judging the world, one squint at a time. "Slow day," Kyle said, trying to break the silence. "Good. That's how we like it," Reeves replied without looking at him. The radio crackled softly. Kyle watched the small-town life roll by: a boy on a bicycle, an old couple holding hands, teenagers loitering near the diner. Peaceful, predictable. But peace is fragile. It takes only one stone to shatter the stillness. Inside Henderson's grocery, an elderly man moved slowly down the canned goods aisle. His name was Samuel Whitaker. To the locals, he was little more than a shadow, someone who lived quietly in a weathered cabin on the outskirts of town. Rumor had it he'd been military, but no one really knew. Sam didn't talk much. He tipped his hat, paid for his things, and went about his business. Today, Sam picked up a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a can of beef stew. His hands moved with a certain deliberateness, as if every motion had been taught, practiced, perfected. As Sam neared the register, a young man in front of him dropped his wallet. It landed silently on the tiled floor. The kid didn't notice he was already halfway out the door. Sam bent slowly, carefully picked it up and turned to call out, "Son!" Before he could finish, the cashier, a new hire named Cindy, saw only what she feared. "Hey," she barked, "put that down." Sam blinked, confused. I was just..." But Cindy wasn't listening. She grabbed the store manager, Mr. Hal Briggs, who quickly made a call to the police station. When the radio chirped in Kyle's cruiser, the words "possible theft" in progress snapped both officers upright. "Let's roll," Reeves said, already flipping on the lights. They arrived within minutes. Henderson's grocery stood still and silent, the little bell above the door jingling as Kyle and Reeves stepped inside. Mr. Briggs pointed immediately at Sam. "That's him," Briggs said, his voice shaky. "Tried to steal that wallet." Sam stood by the register, the wallet still clutched awkwardly in his hand, as if unsure what to do now. His face was calm, almost tired. Kyle hesitated. Something about the scene felt wrong. But Reeves was already moving. "Sir, turn around, hands behind your back," Reeves barked. "There's a misunderstanding," Sam said quietly. His voice was low, gravelly. "Turn around now." Sam complied without resistance. Kyle pulled the handcuffs from his belt with a sinking feeling in his gut. Back at the station, they processed him like any other suspect. Reeves tossed Sam's worn army jacket onto a bench and locked him in the holding cell. Kyle lingered by the glass, watching the old man sit silently on the steel bench inside. No anger, no fear, just a heavy, unbreakable calm. "You know," Reeves said with a smirk, "stealing a wallet's a serious crime." Sam didn't answer. Kyle sighed and turned away. He reached for the jacket, meaning to catalog Sam's belongings properly. That's when his fingers brushed against something, a hidden inner pocket. Inside, he found a badge. Not a police badge, not a standard military ID. This was different, heavy, solid, etched with an eagle crest, and the words "United States Special Forces." "Clearance Alpha Level." Kyle's heart skipped a beat. "A Sarge," he called. Reeves wandered over, peering down at the badge. "What the hell is that?" Reeves muttered. They rummaged through Sam's wallet. Next, no credit cards. Just an odd-looking military ID, older than anything Kyle had ever seen. "Better call it in," Reeves said, suddenly serious. Kyle swallowed hard and dialed the number printed on the back of the ID. The line clicked once, then a voice answered. Agent Daniel Cross, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Kyle stammered. This is Officer Kyle Morgan, Millstone PD. We have a Samuel Whitaker in custody, arrested for alleged theft. Silence. Then the voice came back hard and sharp. Repeat that name. Samuel Whitaker. Another silence longer. Secure your station. Do not speak to him. Do not question him. We are dispatching a team immediately. 30 minutes. The call ended before Kyle could even reply. He turned to Reeves, his face pale. Who the hell did we just arrest? He whispered. Reeves had no answer, only the grim tightening of his jaw. Inside the cell, Sam lifted his head and looked at them through the glass. You boys might want to make some fresh coffee, he said calmly. Looks like it's gonna be a long afternoon. Kyle felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Outside, the sun kept shining on the sleepy little town. Inside, a storm was gathering, silent and unseen. The air inside Millstone Police Station grew heavier with every passing minute. Officer Kyle Morgan paced near the front desk, unable to sit still. Sergeant Tom Reeves leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Both men kept glancing at the clock. 30 minutes, the agent had said. 25 minutes now. Kyle found himself stealing looks at the holding cell. Samuel Whitaker. No, not just Sam anymore, but someone whose name made the FBI dispatch a team without hesitation, sat motionless on the bench. His hands rested calmly on his knees, his expression unreadable, almost as if he were waiting for something he had seen coming in all along. You think he's dangerous, Kyle whispered. Reeves shook his head slowly. Not dangerous, Ivernit. Before Kyle could respond, the low rumble of engines echoed from outside. He rushed to the window. 4 black SUVs rolled into the parking lot with surgical precision. The sight made Kyle's stomach clench. This wasn't some regional office response. This was federal high priority and deeply serious. The first SUV's door swung open and a tall man in a crisp black suit stepped out. His movements were sharp, purposeful. Others followed, agents fanning out, securing the perimeter as if they were expecting an armed confrontation. Kyle opened the station door, his hand trembling slightly. The lead agent approached, flashing a badge so quickly it was a blur. Special Agent Matthew Cross, FBI. Where is Mr. Whitaker? Kyle stammered, pointing toward the holding cell. Without waiting, Cross and 2 agents strode past, unlocking the cell with swift, precise movements. Sam stood up even before they fully opened the door. He nodded politely to the agents as if greeting old friends. Mr. Whitaker, apologies for the inconvenience, Agent Cross said with unmistakable respect. No trouble at all, son, Sam replied, voice steady. The agents guided Sam out without so much as a glance at Kyle or Reeves. It was only after they left that another agent, a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet authority, approached the officers. You have any idea who you arrested today? She asked. Kyle shook his head. She sighed. Samuel Whitaker served in 5 classified theaters of combat. He's a legend in certain circles. Counterterrorism, covert ops. His record is so classified, even I've seen only fragments. Reeves cleared his throat. Why would someone like him be living in a shack outside Millstone? The agent gave a sad smile. Some heroes prefer silence over medals. Without another word, she turned and left, disappearing into one of the black SUVs. Kyle stood frozen for a long time after the cars disappeared down the road. He replayed every moment, the cuffs, the way Reeves had shoved Sam into the cruiser. The quiet dignity Sam never lost. We treated him like a criminal, Kyle whispered. Reeves removed his sunglasses slowly. For once, he looked every bit his age. We didn't even listen. The station fell into a heavy silence. The only sound was the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. That night, Kyle couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sam's calm face through the glass, heard his steady voice saying, "It's going to be a long afternoon." He knew something had shifted today, something he couldn't undo. He just didn't realize yet the story wasn't over. Tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. The next morning, the small town of Millstone was buzzing like a kicked beehive. Word had spread fast. At first, it was whispers in the diner, hurried conversations over coffee refills. Then it leaked onto the sidewalks, into the hardware store, even inside the church vestibule. An old man arrested FBI agents storming the police station, SUVs and black men in suits. Everyone had a version of the story, but none of them felt complete. None of them explained why Officer Kyle Morgan woke up with a pit in his stomach, or why Sergeant Tom Reeves stayed uncharacteristically silent. All morning, Kyle sat behind the front desk staring at nothing. the coffee in his mug growing cold. Every mistake, every misjudgment from the day before replayed in his mind like a broken record. The worst part wasn't the FBI agents. It wasn't even the silent shame in the station. It was the simple fact that Samuel Whitaker hadn't fought them, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't even frowned. He had let them put him in cuffs. A man who had seen things Kyle couldn't even imagine, and he had shown them more grace than they deserved. The station door jingled open and Kyle's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was a woman, maybe late 30s, dressed plainly in jeans and a brown jacket. Her hair was tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She carried a small, battered leather satchel. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Kyle asked, forcing his voice steady. She nodded. "I'm looking for the officers who arrested Samuel Whitaker yesterday." Kyle and Reeves exchanged a quick glance. "That would be us," Reeves said, his tone cautious. The woman stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter. I work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, Special Services Division." She pulled a slim badge from her jacket. "The same division that dealt with high-level classified veteran operations." Kyle felt his mouth go dry. Dr. Carter continued, her eyes locking onto Kyle's. "Mr. Whitaker isn't just a veteran. He's part of a secured federal program for retired covert operatives. His status is protected by national security measures. What you did yesterday," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "was dangerous, not just for yourselves, but for him." Kyle swallowed hard. "We didn't know." "That's the problem, Officer Morgan," she said quietly. "You didn't even ask." Silence fell between them. Finally, Dr. Carter set the leather satchel on the counter. She opened it slowly, revealing several files, each stamped, "Top Secret" in bold red letters. She slid one file forward without opening it. "This is Mr. Whitaker's federal classification. You are not authorized to read it, but you should understand he has been awarded citations that don't even officially exist. He served in missions that, if compromised, would jeopardize national interests." Kyle felt dizzy. Everything they had done yesterday, every careless shove, every dismissive word, it hadn't just been wrong. It had been a betrayal. "Why is he here?" Reeves asked finally, his voice rough. Dr. Carter's expression softened a little. "Because heroes like him don't want to be paraded around. They want peace. They want a quiet life." She took a deep breath before continuing. "Whitaker saved lives you'll never know about, prevented wars you'll never hear about, and now all he asks for is a little dignity." She closed the satchel carefully. "Consider this a professional courtesy. There will be no formal charges filed, no lawsuits, but the federal government will be monitoring this station closely." Kyle nodded numbly. As Dr. Carter turned to leave, she hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "Officer Morgan," she said softly. "Yes, ma'am." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "Not every lesson comes with a second chance. You might want to use this one well." And then she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of old leather and a silence heavier than any reprimand. Kyle sat back down, staring at the file folder he wasn't allowed to open. The weight of it all crashed down on him. Not just the guilt, but the realization that true heroes didn't ask for recognition. They just walked quietly among us. And we barely noticed, until it was almost too late. 2 days later, the town of Millstone had almost returned to normal. Or at least that's what it looked like on the surface, but Kyle Morgan felt a shift in the air. It was in the cautious way people glanced at the police cruisers now, in the whispered conversations that stopped the moment he walked by, in the looks of quiet judgment he caught from old veterans sitting outside the diner. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even resentment. It was disappointment, and somehow that cut deeper than rage ever could. Kyle knew he couldn't erase what had happened, but he also knew he couldn't just pretend it hadn't. So on his next day off, he made a decision. He drove the narrow, winding road out past the edge of town, where the woods thickened and the houses thinned out to nothing but fields and silence. There, tucked beneath a slope of pines, stood a small, weather-beaten cabin, Samuel Whitaker's home. Kyle parked his cruiser a good distance away and walked the last stretch on foot, his boots crunching over gravel and fallen pine needles. As he approached, he spotted Sam sitting on the porch, an old rocking chair creaking beneath him, a battered book resting in his lap. The old man looked up long before Kyle reached the steps. Not surprised, not wary, just calm. Kyle stopped at the bottom of the porch, hat in hand, feeling every inch the rookie he truly was. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, voice low. Sam closed his book gently and set it aside. "You're braver than most coming out here," he said almost conversationally. Kyle swallowed. "I needed to apologize." In person, Sam's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. Then come on up, son. No need to shout from the driveway. Kyle climbed the steps slowly, feeling the weight of every footfall. When he reached the porch, he stood awkwardly, not knowing whether to sit or stand. Sam saved him the trouble. He pointed to an old wooden chair across from his own. Have a seat, Kyle sat, hands clasped tightly between his knees. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the soft breeze, whispering through the trees and the distant call of a crow overhead. Finally, Kyle broke the silence. I didn't listen, he said. I assumed the worst. I treated you like you hadn't earned any better. Sam studied him quietly. You were doing your job as you understood it, he said simply. It's easy to judge from the outside. Kyle shook his head fiercely. That's not good enough. I should have done better. Another long pause. Sam leaned back slightly in his chair, the old wood groaning. Son, he said, the truth is I've been judged worse by men who knew more and forgiven better men than you for worse mistakes. Kyle looked up, surprised. Sam's gaze was steady but not unkind. I don't hold grudges, he said. Life's too short and frankly too precious. Kyle exhaled, the knot in his chest loosening just a little. Still, he said, I need to earn back the trust I lost. Sam gave a soft, almost inaudible chuckle. That's the thing about trust, he said. You can't demand it. You can only live in a way that deserves it. Kyle nodded slowly, feeling those words etch themselves somewhere deep inside him. They sat there for a while longer, talking about nothing and everything. Sam told stories not about missions or medals, but about fishing trips gone wrong, about stubborn tractors and leaky roofs, about life. Kyle listened, really listened for the first time in a long while, and as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the porch, he realized something simple and powerful. Respect isn't owed by titles or uniforms. It's earned in the way a man carries himself when no one's watching. And Samuel Whitaker, in his quiet strength, his endless patience, carried himself with the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Stories Kyle would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of. When Kyle finally stood to leave, Sam reached out and clasped his shoulder. Don't beat yourself up forever, son, he said. Just be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. Kyle nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Thank you, sir. Sam gave a small nod in return. Now go on, he said, waving him off with mock sternness, before I make you chop firewood to pay off your penance. Kyle laughed a real honest laugh and tipped his hat before heading back down the path. The setting sun bathed the world in gold as he walked away from the cabin. His heart lighter than it had been in days. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a start, and sometimes that's enough. 1 week later, something unexpected happened. The morning shift at Millstone Police Station was slow as usual. Kyle Morgan sat at his desk, sorting through paperwork, trying to focus, but his mind kept drifting back to that conversation on Samuel Whitaker's porch. The station door creaked open, the bell above giving its usual tired jingle. Kyle looked up and froze. Standing there was a man in full military dress uniform, not a casual visitor, not a recruiter, a general. Silver-haired, broad-shouldered metals gleaming quietly against the dark green of his jacket. Behind him stood 2 other men, both younger, also in uniform, their posture straight, their expressions unreadable. Sergeant Reeves stepped out of his office, his usual swagger gone. He stiffened instinctively, coming to attention. The general scanned the small station with an intensity that made Kyle feel like his soul was being inspected. Finally, the general's eyes found Kyle. He walked forward every step, measured, deliberate. When he reached the front desk, he removed his hat, slowly, respectfully. Officer Morgan, he said, his voice a low rumble. I'm Major General Clayton Ross, retired. Kyle rose from his chair so quickly he almost knocked it over. Sir, he stammered. How can I help you? General Ross smiled slightly, a tight, knowing smile. I believe you already have, he said. Kyle blinked, confused. The general reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, velvet-lined box. He placed it on the desk between them with a soft thud. Kyle stared at it, unsure. Open it, Ross said. With trembling fingers, Kyle flipped the box open. Inside was a military challenge coin, but not just any coin. It was engraved with a single phrase for lessons learned in silence. Kyle looked up, his throat tightening painfully. General Ross nodded. Mr. Whitaker asked that this be delivered personally, he said. He wanted you to understand something. Kyle swallowed hard, barely trusting his voice. Understand what, sir? The general's expression softened. That mistakes don't define a man, he said, but how he answers them does. Kyle felt something crack open inside him, a pressure he hadn't even realized he was carrying. General Ross straightened, slipping his hat back onto his head. And one more thing, he added. You're being reassigned. Kyle's heart jumped. Reassigned? Sir Ross nodded. The Department of Veteran Affairs has requested you for a special liaison program, working directly with retired veterans, people like Sam. Kyle's mouth fell open. I don't know what to say. The general gave a rare full smile. Then say yes. Kyle stood taller, feeling something steady anchor inside him. Yes, sir, he said firmly. General Ross gave a sharp nod and turned to leave. At the door he paused, glancing back. And Officer Morgan, he said, Sir, welcome to the side of history no one talks about, but that matters most. With that, the general and his escorts disappeared into the sunlight. Outside, the station was silent for a long moment. Finally, Sergeant Reeves let out a low whistle. Kid, he said, clapping Kyle on the back, you just stepped into something bigger than this whole town. Kyle smiled quietly, tucking the coin into his breast pocket. He didn't need a parade. He didn't need headlines. He just needed to be better tomorrow than he was yesterday, because somewhere out there, men like Samuel Whitaker still walked among them, silent, unseen, carrying the weight of countless sacrifices. And now Kyle would spend the rest of his career honoring them, one quiet act at a time, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was right. Because some debts could never be repaid, it only carried forward with humility and with heart. And sometimes the greatest tribute you could offer a hero was simply to listen. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.